Happy Memorial Day, everybody. This is another edition of 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Before I go into the crew, I want to thank all the members of the military for everything that they've done to make us a very free country. And we're really delighted to be able to provide you with a Memorial Day broadcast. So my deepest respect for all the military people that have ever gone out there and served our country and those that are currently doing it now. So with that said, I want to introduce the crew real quick. Candy Ebling will be on for a segment or so. And we've got Ashton Nix, who's fitting in real well with this group. So as long as Ashton wants to come on, we're more than happy to have this guy. He's as cool as anybody can be, and he's as knowledgeable as anybody can be as well. Proud to have Ashton as part of our group. Mark Maraday, and of course, George Icorn. So let's go over the topics real quickly. Craig Counsell. We're going to talk about Craig Counsell's return to Milwaukee. A football game broke out over at Comericapark yesterday featuring the Detroit Tigers and the Toronto Blue Jays. Go figure, okay? And last but not least, we're going to talk about the Pittsburgh Pirates. Why? Well, we're going to talk about their Hall of Fame and the latest inductees in there, and everybody in the crew will have an opportunity to speak of something on their own. None of us here will talk about what they've said because, we want to give everybody the opportunity to have the freedom to do exactly what they want to talk about because I can't read minds or what's on their mind. With that said, why am I not in a high-pitched voice tonight? At least beginning Memorial Day. It's a day you recognize. It's not a day you celebrate like Christmas, July 4th. This is something where we talk about, and be thankful for. Anybody else on the crew want to talk about Memorial Day real quickly?
I will dedicate this show to Todd Cornell. He served in the Army. He lost his life over in Afghanistan. In Iraq, taking down Saddam Hussein. I know that was years ago, but he was a friend, and he's greatly missed. And I appreciate everything he and everybody else that served and lost their life, so that we could go on and be on a show like this and talk about things.
Well done, Candy. What about anybody else? Any thoughts about Memorial Day before we get on to the rest of the topics?
Well, I'm just grateful again for the service. My father, my father-in-law, my nephew, my brother-in-law, lots of uncles, of course, were in the service. So hats off to all those men and women who have served our country well. Thank you.
What about you, Ashton?
Just thank you for everybody who's, as we already said, that who's given their life to, like Candy said, we could just sit on here and talk about whatever we want. People are either going to listen or not listen, but nobody's, we're not in fear of, anybody persecuting us for doing this.
Exactly. All right, Mark.
Oh, just a big shout out to my friends that served in the military, my father, my uncles. I mean, I had a lot of people around me who did. I didn't. I just didn't. But, I really appreciate everything they did for us. Without them, there is no us, like you guys all said.
Yeah, my shout outs go out to my father, Mike Morganroth, who didn't serve overseas, but he went out there and was at Fort Sill, Oklahoma. Jerry Weinberg, who to me is a very close father figure of mine. And last but not least, my Uncle Robert, actually in Vietnam. So I with them. So with that said, okay, let's take it. Let's go with our first topic. Craig Counsell's return to Milwaukee. What it did was it was just under 42,000 at millerpark / American Family Field. It's the third sellout of the year, so there's no shortage of booze. And of course, you can rest assured a lot of the Wrigley people in Chicago came up for it. The result, the Milwaukee Brewers defeat the Cubs a score of 5-1. And they had a 5-run 8th inning where willyadames capped it off with a 3-run shot. Milwaukee's record under Pat Murphy is 31-22, where the Cubs under Counsell is 27-27. So no better person than to really lead off on this segment than Candy Ebling. Go ahead, Candy.
So let's face it, all those Brewer fans were happy today. Last year, when Craig Counsell decided to make the switch to the Cubs, there have been a lot of fans that were not happy, that were upset. But let's face it, every one of us on this panel, I'm guessing, if you got paid a third more of your salary to go to your competitor, most of us would go, especially if you're talking about millions of dollars to set yourself up for life. Let's face it,
Right.
most of us would do it. So I really can't knock him for doing that. Did it hurt and sting that it went in within the division? Of course. But the Cubs have lots of money to throw around, and Craig Counsell undoubtedly is a very good manager. But on a day like today, Craig decided to have his debut at Millerpark in the opposite uniform, in the opposite locker room, and he went home a little unhappy. He came out in right before in the 8th, and he switched pitchers. And I can tell you, watching the game, there were so many fans booing him. And look, it's a questionable call whether you keep pitchers in or not. It was a 3-hit contest until then, and he decided to switch pitchers, and it didn't work out for him. That's going to happen. Baseball is a long season, but I'm thankful that Pat Murphy got the best of him, and the Brewers got the best of the Cubs today. We are ahead of them in the standings, surprisingly to most people, because let's face it, we were not projected to be that high. So I'm thankful that we did, and we had a good game, and we've been playing well so far. Our pitching has been lights out, and yet it's not one pitcher that's doing it. It's a bunch of them, and as I was listening to the announcers, they were talking about Stearns regretting letting Josh Hader go during that season a couple seasons ago, because that changed that season. And there's still one player that is still on the original team from that trade, and that is on the Brewers, and that is Gasser, who pitched 7 innings. He was in there in the 7th inning. He's doing a really, really good job. He was a prospect at the time when they made that Hader trade, and so lots of people were questioning it, but in the end, he's working out really well now. And so as much as it hurt back then, and it hurt when Counsell left, the team's going on. And, right now we're playing good ball, which is all I can ask for, and happy about it.
Last week, Candy and I had the chance to cover the 3rd game of the 3-game series with the Brewers and the Marlins here at Lone Depot Park. And I can tell you right now, number one, I talked to sophiaminnaert, who's a really, really nice young lady, but a really talented young announcer. And I asked Sophia about the Counsell thing. She told me this. And that's, hey, you know what? We're happy for Craig Counsell that he went out there and, moved on to Chicago if that's what he wanted to do. But Pat Murphy not only stayed, but he kept the entire coaching staff. So, in other words, Craig has to rebuild a new coaching staff around him. But, the Brewers per se don't have any ill will towards Craig Counsell at all. And I think the fans notably are upset. But Sophia told me we got to keep the coaching staff. And Pat Murphy's done a really good job. We can't ask for a much better result than that. So, okay, George.
Yeah, this is it's not so untypical of fans. I think they do it more often with a player, obviously, that's been traded and dealt to another team. I think we see that more frequently in all sports, but especially in baseball, when your superstar has gone to another city to get more money and get a better, fatter contract. But Candy's right. I mean, you can't fault the guy for looking out for his future, them handing him $40 million or whatever and a fat contract. But boy, oh boy, I'm telling you right now, sweet revenge for the Brew Crew. They're playing well. They're ahead of the Cubs in the standings, like you guys said. And it just goes to show you that, just one person, one manager doesn't always make the difference. And I understand it's close. Okay, we still got a lot of baseball to be played, of course. And this is going to be probably a tight race. But I don't know. I think it's just a good revenge and good old good-natured harassment the fans are giving Counsell, and I don't blame them. I mean, they're paying customers; they have a right to do that. And he did leave the team, and most people obviously wanted him to stay. So I agree with the fans in this one. They do have a right to boo and to show them how they really feel.
Hey, Mark.
I never really get upset when somebody leaves for greener pastures, to be quite honest with you, simply because it's a business and they have no problem firing a guy without opportunity. And, I mean, to get mad at a guy for moving on because he was getting, like Candy said, a third more of what he was making. How can you begrudge somebody? He's making he's got generational wealth in his bank account now for his grandchildren and potentially his great-grandchildren. So, and plus from that perspective, like, he left behind a hell of a team. If you bring in the right guy, you already have the coaching staff in place. You bring in the right guy who just needs to do his job and let everybody else do their job. They're not going to miss a beat. I was messing around today looking at the top 10 prospects in each position. Milwaukee's loaded. Like they're loaded. They've got top 10 prospects in almost every position in the minor league. So, I can't begrudge that guy. It's a much bigger picture. It really is.
Okay, Ashton, what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I think it's just a part of sports where you're gonna boo a former member of the organization. I know just a couple of weeks ago here in Texas, Ron Washington, who's the manager of the Angels now, came back, division rival, and he got a standing ovation. Now, given Ron Washington hasn't coached for the Rangers in 10 years, it's not like he was just here last year. But he was a significant part of the Rangers, just like Counsell is a significant part of the Brewers. I mean, for however long he managed, 8 or 9 years, had a lot of success, taking multiple playoff appearances. But I think I just think it's something fans do. I do know I did in my research notice that in his hometown in Wisconsin, when he had signed originally with the Cubs, that the field that's named after him in his hometown was vandalized by, I assume, some Brewers fans. So some of us just kind of boo. It's all fun and games, no ill will, but some people take it pretty seriously as well.
Yeah, I was disappointed when I heard that. The only thing I'll leave on a note with this topic is this. Counsell made this decision because not only for his own security, but he wanted to reset the payroll market for a lot of managers as well. And he made a bold move that he felt that managers were getting underpaid. He felt this was something he had to do, not only to take a pay raise right down the road, but to reestablish what they're getting paid. So I have nothing wrong with Craig Counsell. I wish him well with the Cubs, but you know what? It just goes to show you the Brewers, to me, like Mark alluded to, is they have great prospects. They have a pretty good front office team intact. And I even had a chance to meet Christian Yelich last week. And Christian Yelich is ideal for that town. He's just a low-key guy that plays baseball, who I personally don't think would be happy to play in a larger market. Christian's a class act. So more power to Craig, more power to the Brewers. They're going to see each other a lot more. It just so happens the reason we're talking about it is just a timely thing to talk about on Memorial Day of all days. And obviously, we knew that the drama would be exactly what we anticipated from the start. So more power to Craig. Well, you know what? Yesterday at Comericapark, though, a football game broke out in Detroit as the Tigers defeated the Toronto Blue Jays 14-11. How do you do something like this? Well, we had big days for mattvierling. We had 2 home runs, 4 RBIs. Spencertorkelson had a home run and scored 3 runs. And matcanha had 1 run, 3 hits, and 2 RBI. But you know what, folks? Let me go out there and give you the box score, okay? Yeah, Candy can stay on all show, or she doesn't have to. But we're going to have her talk about a station break in just a moment because I got so excited about the Brewers topic. Nevertheless, Toronto 11-14-0. Detroit 14-17-0. The best news for Detroit, however, is they had Memorial Day off. And they have a 2-game series with Mark Mariday's Pittsburgh Pirates coming up on Tuesday and Wednesday. So, you know what, George? You're in Detroit. We've seen a lot of football. 14-11 scores are common, but when the Lions play somebody, not when the Tigers are involved. What are your thoughts about what transpired in downtown Detroit yesterday? And I don't think
yeah, Scott, it was a fantastic finish for Tiger fans. Big crowds this weekend, too, because of the holiday weekend and because they were playing Toronto. Of course, Toronto their only visit to Detroit on this year's schedule. And with as you folks know, Detroit is right across the river from Windsor, Ontario. So a lot of Canadian fans come out. So it was a tremendous game, a big comeback for the Tigers. The game went back and forth and big innings, and I'll tell you what, it was really, really fun for the fans because the Tigers, as you guys know, have had real hitting problems all year, and then they get into these series sometimes, and they get to whack the heck out of the ball. They face bad pitching or whatever the case may be, but that was one of those games where, yeah, it sure looked like a football score. The Lions, of course, play right across the street at Ford Field, but this was all baseball, and it was all fun and lots of home runs. And Mattvierling did a great job. I think he's a good pickup for Detroit. And when he's in the game, he gives you all he's got. He's a good ball player. So yeah, it was a lot of fun. It was an exciting game for the fans and one for those of us watching or listening to as well. Tigers have failed to stay on pace with Cleveland and Kansas City, but they're not out of it yet. They're still in the chase for the wild card. So that's a good thing for Detroit.
What do you think, Ashton?
Yeah, 14-11 is a really odd score for a baseball game. It means they're scoring a lot of runs. Probably pretty entertaining to watch. 12 total pitchers used in that game. And the game time was 3 hours and 19 minutes. That doesn't seem like a long game, but post pitch clock era, that's a very long game. You're used to seeing 2.5 hour games now, but pretty crazy. Lots of runs scored.
Yeah, you could say that. I wonder what the over-under was. I know when I was up there covering the Tigers and the Marlins, Tigers got 6 runs and never scored any more after that.
Yeah.
They couldn't hit themselves out of a paper bag with the Marlins, but don't kid yourself. The Marlins are starting to play better baseball, even though they're not a specific topic. They've won the last 4 series, I believe, when you factor in, the Mets, the Brewers, the Tigers, and am I missing one? Yeah, I think the Diamondbacks. So, okay, we'll turn over to Mark.
I was looking at what Detroit actually has in the pipeline there, and they've got some really good product coming through. The kid who hit the walk-off yesterday, that was amazing for them. What a great way to end a game that's got multiple runs like that. Like, I can't see it happening any better. A single's all great and everything, but to hit a walk-off in a high-scoring game like that. I gotta talk a little bit about Toronto. Toronto was really hyped up going into the season. They made a bunch of moves. They spent a crap ton of money, and boy, that's not panning out for them. I wonder how long before. I'm sure they'll wait at least till June is over, but they may be doing a fire sale up there. I've heard whispers of them, believe it or not, moving on from Guerrero. I couldn't believe it when I read this article, but they kind of feel like they're not going in the direction they wanted to. But the Tigers definitely shouldn't be sleeping on their own cells, because there's plenty of guys coming up through that pipeline, and I think you've got some good young pitching. I know you talked about the Pirates and Detroit playing the next 2 games, man. Hang on to your hat. You're going to see a great matchup tomorrow night with Jared Jones and what's the kid's name? Stubles?
Terrence Skubal, I believe.
Yeah, Skubals. Yeah, you got that matchup tomorrow night. And then the next night, you get Skeens.
That should be interesting. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'll tell you, I wouldn't be surprised if that one actually draws pretty well to see this kid.
Yeah.
I've heard a lot of things about Skeens. We'll bring him up on another show because we have enough Pirate stuff to get to tonight. But obviously, we'll have one in a moment. So, George, so everybody chime in on this one.
Yep.
All right. So the main thing that with the Detroit Tigers, I've always thought A.J. Hinch is a good manager. But as I mentioned before in another show, they don't have anybody down the middle of that lineup that scares me yet. They just don't. If Spencer Torkelson, who, by the way, hit 31 home runs last year, is the guy I thought good. That's not to say, again, the only 50 games in the year. Guys usually get a little bit hotter as the year goes on. We'll see if those numbers come closer or get near or surpass. Time will tell. But let's face it, Detroit's a good rivalry anyways. It used to be in the American League East. They're only separated by 4 hours apart. We all know about the Red Wings and the Maple Leafs having a good rivalry. And so you have the Red Wings and Maple Leafs, and the Tigers and Blue Jays and and the Raptors and Pistons aren't bad when the Pistons are playing well. Okay, and that's when, not going to go off topic too much. And as far as the so you've got three. We don't have to worry about a football rivalry. I don't see the Toronto Argonauts playing the Detroit Lions if they do. I'd love to see that and see what field they would use. But what the heck, But yeah, it was pretty entertaining as well. All right, we'll bring Candy back on for an update.
Station identification. Station identification. Here we go. Scott, most importantly, wrote a book, Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. It talks about his 40 plus years in the media industry and how it has changed over the course of those years. It is available on Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Kindle, Apple, Google. Go out and get it. You won't regret it. We have a website, www.southfloridatribune.com. Scott writes, George writes, I take pictures. You never know what you might see up there. Ralph, happy Memorial Day. Thanks for tuning in. If you want to listen to our podcast, wherever you get your podcast, Apple, Google, iHeartRadio, you name it, CastBox, Deezer, all those places, we're there. Go see. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott, 954-304-4941. Let's see. What else did I miss, Scott?
The shows, all the different times and days.
All the show. Oh, that's right. Well, today is Monday. So today is baseball, 108 Stitches Baseball Talk. Tuesday nights is Inside the Pigskin Football. Wednesday nights, Sports Exchange. You just never know what we're going to be talking about. It could be NFL. It could be golf. It could be cornhole. You name it. We've talked about it. So stay tuned to figure out what we're talking about this week. Thursday nights is to be determined. We're going to do some changes with our Thursday night lineup, so you just never know. Scott has introduced a new show. It's called No Filter, and it is on nofilter.net. It is a one-on-one show. Scott, the Motor City Madmouth, interviews someone. Last week, it was Melfar Jr. Go over to nofilter.net and look at the show. See what interesting things they talked about. They talked about everything from the car business to Mel playing with the LA Rams. Got to go over there and check it out. Okay, back to you, Scott.
Hey, Ralph, you picked a good show to come on tonight, my friend. There's some Pittsburgh topics here. Of course, he just mentioned, that the Tigers and the Pirates will be facing each other the next couple of days. But now we're going to segue over to another one. All right, now this one's interesting. The Pirates announced that Barry Bonds, Jim Leyland, and longtime catcher Manny Sansvillen will be inducted into the Pirates Hall of Fame. You know what? Let's go ahead and lead it off with Mr. Pirate himself there, Mark Meriday. What do you think of this?
Oh, I think it's a wonderful thing. I really I think it's about time that Pittsburgh starts letting Bonds back into Pittsburgh lore, to be honest with you. They let Yarmer Yager in, and he claimed he was dying alive in Pittsburgh. And this past year, they let him back into Pittsburgh, and they raised his number. It's time that they start recognizing Bonds for who he was. Now, in terms of his personality, maybe not so much, but what he did on the field. A quick story. When Bobby Bonilla's contract was up the year before Bonds, they had offered him 4 years, $16 million, which sounds like nothing today, right? And Bonilla turned it down. He said he wanted to go into the free agent market. And Bonds said, if you offer me the same contract, I'll sign. And Pittsburgh didn't want to offer it to him, and that's when he ended up going out to San Francisco.
Really?
It was really heartbreaking that happened. But Jim Leyland, I mean, you guys from Detroit, you get Jim Leyland. He's old school manager. He brings the fire, the heat. He brings it all. He knows how to work with those guys. He could probably still be managing today and be successful. He just understood the game and how to work with the players. Man, he was a cigarette smoker, though, wasn't he, fellas? Holy crap. I never see anything like it. They'd show him going down the down the tunnel toward the locker room catching a smoke in between hittings, and I would crack up, man. But and then Manny, well, Manny's a staple in Pittsburgh. Manny was Roberto's right-hand man, and he's got a little barbecue thing there in the stadium. He's beloved. He's always there. He takes pictures and does all that stuff. So they picked 3 really, really solid individuals to put in their Ring of Honor, Hall of Fame, whatever they are calling it.
All right, let me ask you another question. Everybody's going to get the same question besides their opinion, okay?
Okay.
First of all, I have no problem whatsoever with Barry Bonds getting into the Pirates Hall of Fame, but I do have a problem with him getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame.
Mm-hmm.
And the reason why I say that is because when I was at Comericapark, obviously for the Tigers and Marlins, I didn't walk around like we did before George and Candy when we went to the Royals game. Well, this was different. I was there for 3 games versus 1. And, I guess I'll just continue on and defer to you guys, okay? I have zero. Again, I do object to him getting into the Baseball Hall of Fame because obviously, there's some question about his PEDs, but he was a heck of a player in Pittsburgh. He proved that he could steal bases is what he did, in addition to have power. Well, the stolen bases went away in San Francisco, and it doesn't take a rocket scientist to go out there and understand why they did. So, as far as I'm concerned, more power to Barry for getting in the Pirates Hall of Fame. And, he is a part of Pittsburgh history. Baseball Hall of Fame, another animal. Just like they've done in Cincinnati with Pete Rose, okay? Baseball Hall of Fame, no way. Cincinnati, the Reds Hall of Fame, I'm all for it. But that said, okay, Mark, you can answer that question, and then I'll go to the rest of them.
My feelings towards those guys in the Hall of Fame, first of all, even if they are using PEDs, which they've been proven to use, they still have to perform. How many guys were using it that we have no clue that they used it that couldn't perform? That's my big hang up with it. Second of all, you could put a little asterisk beside their name. I mean, they did remarkable things. Clemens, Bonds, McGuire, Sosa, those are that they kind of, in no uncertain terms, they brought baseball back to the forefront with the home runs and things like that. I can see how people would have a problem with it. I know Pete Rose is very upfront. Yes, he gambled on baseball. And that's why he's not in there. But, it's just so tough because, you take the NFL Hall of Fame and you look at it from that perspective, and not that we need to go down that road, but I'll be very quick about what I say here. Lawrence Taylor was a convicted cocaine user, and they put him in without a problem.
Yeah, but Mark, you got to understand one thing. I know it's ironic, too. Ashton and George and Mark and I met each other in person over at the Baseball Hall of Fame, which was cool. We did a show out there. But the reality is they do have an exhibit for the steroid use, so they acknowledge those players because baseball's a history museum. But Pete Rose, admitted after he lied for many years. It's different when you deny, and then say, yeah, I did it. Okay?
Yeah.
And if Pete Rose had been more upfront and didn't lie all the way around, he may not have gotten in, but his reputation may have gotten him a little bit more understanding with Bud Selig and Rob Manfred, which it didn't get with either of them. So that's where I think there's this little fine line where you draw it just a little bit. And again, I have no problem with Barry going into the Pirates, just like I was happy that he's received out in San Francisco, but not Cooperstown. All right, so Mark, if you want to rebuttal that one more time, you can. Then I want to turn over to Ashton and George.
No, I'm good. I'm good with where I came from.
Okay. All right, Ashton, what do you think?
I think Mark has a really good point of we don't know who else was doing it. I mean, Barry Bonds was one who got caught with Mark McGuire and Sammy Sosa, Rafael Palmeiro. I think a lot of why they're not in added with Pete Rose is being part of the Baseball Hall of Fame changes your status, and you can make a lot of extra money being a Hall of Famer, quote or unquote. And I think that's what a lot of it is. I think Pete Rose will get in the Hall of Fame after he dies. I don't know about the steroid guys. I'm not sure if they just keep them out forever, but being part of a team or organizational Hall of Fame is a little bit different. That's more for the fans. There's not really a voting process to get in, I guess, unless it's in-house. I don't think you can say, hey, I'm in the Pittsburgh Pirates Hall of Fame, but I don't think that really elevates you that much. I mean, I think it's good that he's getting into the Hall of Fame. It's just something that the Pirates organization can recognize. The fans can enjoy it. It's whatever. I don't necessarily have a problem with him if he got into the Hall of Fame. I'm not necessarily the Baseball Hall of Fame. I'm not necessarily rooting for it. But it does make significant, it makes a significant difference that he did use PEDs. I mean, he still has to hit the ball and perform, but there were a lot of guys that didn't use PEDs, and who knows where they would have been if they had. I think Bonds probably would have been in the Hall of Fame anyways if he wouldn't have used PEDs. He wouldn't be the home run king, but he was very significant to the Pirates organization, part of multiple division title teams. I did not know that little tidbit about why he didn't sign back with the Pirates and went to San Francisco. That's interesting that he wanted to stay with the Pirates. That's something I did not know. But no, I think it's great that he's getting into the Pirates Hall of Fame. Maybe the Giants fall through. I don't know. He may be in the Giants Hall of Fame. I don't believe he is, though.
Well, he's liked there anyways. Let me add something before I turn over to George Eichhorn. Sam, I'm glad, Ashton, you brought up Sammy Sosa. Okay, I really am. And I'll tell you why. Because number one, when he was with the Texas Rangers organization, I actually was the director of public relations in 1987, the first sales and baseball job I had. And Sammy and I got along great. We did. So I always have a soft spot for him. And that was a team, okay, that ended up losing 90 games, and they had like 10 to 12 prospects. That was unbelievable. And, I always have a soft spot for him. Yeah, I actually got a good interview with him over at Joe Robbie Stadium when I was able to work, when I went over there, and I was credentialed for a few games. So it didn't work out. It worked out really well for me. And let me George, you'll wait for just a moment, because Ashton brought up an outstanding point. He really, really did. So this lady, Sammy's pretty popular at the time. He really, really is. Okay. But, because of the home run chase, let's not forget McGuire and Sosa, when baseball was in trouble, revitalized that sport during a very period of time when it was all, a shot for dead, but those guys, that incredible home run chase. But then I asked the Cubs PR person if I can talk to him. She said no. I said, well, you know what I did? I said, hey, Sammy, remember me? Right in front of the woman. And then he gave me this wide grin like Sammy Sosa could give you. It's a smile and a wide grin, and then he acknowledges me. So I told the woman I was his director of public relations back in Class A ball. Okay. Should give you any reason why you should not allow me to talk to this man. Well, you know what? The woman caved and let me do it. I got a one-on-one with him over in his locker, on the Cubs side. It was pretty good. But I always have a soft spot for him. I understand why he's not in there, because obviously the allocations and so forth don't work for him. But I have compassion and sympathy for Sammy. But I also have to be objective about the way I go about my business too, and try to look at everything on both sides. And, but you know what, Ashton, you're right. Okay. Rose will get in when he's dead. Let's acknowledge rocket scientist, because he's bouncing in here. All right. Go ahead, Candy. Put them all up. Hey, you woke up. Good stuff, Rocket. What's going on, Ashton? You got a fan out there. All right. Ashton should be watching the Dallas Stars game right now as he lives there. Dallas down 2-0. You probably gave him a reason not to watch it and be on with us.
I have it on in the background over there. I keep checking it every now and then, but
good
not
to have
that
you
interested right now.
Good to have you on, Rocket Scientist. Happy Memorial Day to you. I don't know where the rest of them are, but we're glad you made it here tonight. All right, George Eichhorn's been waiting patiently for this.
Oh, yes. What a great topic. Well, first of all, hats off on those upcoming Pirates Hall of Famers. I mean, let's start with our man, Jimleyland, who had a fun run with the Pittsburgh Pirates. And then, of course, he bounced around a bit, but Florida Marlins and a cup of coffee out in Colorado and Detroit to close his career. So the man's a great guy, good baseball mind. He has such a passion for the game. And, of course, is going into Cooperstown as well as to the Pirates Hall of Fame. Manny Sanguillen, I always loved him too. Good smile on his face. I mean, just one of the great catchers, that really did the job day in and day out. We were blessed in Detroit with a couple of those guys, Bill Freehand back in 1968 when we won it all. And then in 1984, which I can't believe is 40 years ago, when the Tigers won the world championship with Lance Parrish. They call him the Big Wheel. And I know how important a catcher is to a team. Heck, our host here, Scott Morganroth, started out his younger days as being a catcher, and he knows all about how tough a job that is. And so hats off to Manny Sanguillen. As far as Bonds goes, I think you guys nailed it. I mean, if Pittsburgh wants to honor him as they are in their Hall of Fame, they have every right to do so. That is something that the Tigers don't do here in Detroit. They don't really have a Ring of Honor or a Hall of Fame, but what they do is they acknowledge your name or your number or both on a wall out in deep center or right field. But that's being said, that Bonds, no, I would not put him in the Hall of Fame. It was a sad era. I blame Bud Selig for a lot of that era, and ironically, Selig's in the Hall of Fame, as we know. But no, I think Bonds had a good career, but I wouldn't put him in the Baseball Hall of Fame at this time.
You know, it's amazing. You know, you talk about my time with catchers. I've been taught one of my great sources within the Marlins organization. He's a PR communications guy. I actually met him in Detroit, actually. You know, because when you're on the home turf, everybody's around and there's so many more of us. But when you're on the road, it's a much different animal. So the guy's name is Louis Durante Jr. He helped me actually get an interview with Dane Myers, and he's great. Say anything you need, let me know. I got his number and all that. So I said, listen, here's what you need to do, Louis. By the end of the year, I need you to get me an interview with a catcher. Okay, a catcher on the Marlins. Okay, we got the rest of the year, and knowing Louis, he'll come through. After all, the way he orchestrated that Dane Myers one up in Detroit was unbelievable. So, yeah. But that's just what catching is in my blood. It really is. I mean, I love being able to go ahead, be behind the plate, framing pitches, talking to the umpires and the batter and talking to my pitcher. I'd probably get blown out in today's game with all the antics that I pulled back in the day. So, I'm not afraid to admit it on live national podcasting or broadcasting, whatever you want to call it these days. But I love catching. I was into the game at all time. I would warm up our pitcher between innings. I was that hyper. I mean, we didn't need a bullpen going. I would do it at myself. And, I didn't care about the beating I took there. The only regret I have about catching is when I played pony league ball, that I had wished I had played that position there. But my body at that time, being young, got beat up good. It did, taking all those foul balls right to my mask and getting hit all over the place. I don't think it's led to my later concussion injuries and head injuries that I'm currently experiencing. I love the position. I really, really do. And that's why Manny Sanguillen, I don't know how long they've had the Pirates Hall of Fame, but I'm glad he got in. Catching, to me, is a position that's the most underrated and underappreciated position on the planet. Even when they had Alex Avila with the Tigers, this guy took a beating behind the plate like I've never seen a catcher take a beating behind the plate. So more power to them. In fact, I'm happy for all three. I don't know what the Tigers are doing, and I know lots of clubs have their own Hall of Fame, and some of them don't. But nevertheless, I'm on board with all three. Now we get to the portion of the show where all my crew has a parting shot. With that said, we won't rebuttal any of them. Everybody, this is their own personal topic. Eichhorn, George, lead off.
Oh boy, there's so many different things to talk about here. I'll tell you what.
Well, we only need one.
One of my, it'll be just one. One of my parting shots is going to be, again, the broadcasting of games. We're blessed here in Detroit with a young man named Dan Dickerson. He had unbelievable shoes to follow. Obviously, he had to fill the shoes of one Ernie Harwell, who, as Scott and I know, was a dear friend and a dear, dear man, one of the greatest broadcasters of all time, no question about it. But Dickerson has done a nice job. He actually got his start in radio as a newsman and has made a great transition from news to sports. He used to do University of Michigan basketball, and he did some baseball. But he was fortunate because he came in to the broadcast booth as Ernie was leaving, so to speak, in the last couple of years with Ernie. he had an opportunity to spend a couple of years with Ernie. So my salute is just going to be on this day to a great man. He's a great Christian. He's a very nice person. And they gave him a bobblehead doll this year, which is a really sign of respect, obviously, for a broadcaster to have a bobblehead doll giveaway. So a man who's unheralded probably in most cities. They probably never heard of the guy. And he is a Michigan guy through and through. So Dan Dickerson, you're doing a great job. What he's doing some radio and some television when Jason has to do one of the other national broadcasts that he does. So hats off to Dan Dickerson. I've long overdue for me to salute him. He's been a great guy, a great friend, and obviously a great announcer here in Detroit.
Now, as I understand yesterday, I didn't see the broadcast of Roku. Wasn't Dan Dickerson doing it with Johnny Kane and Joe Carter? Is that correct? So now he's getting a little bit of national respect in
yes,
Roku.
he did. You're right, Scott. They did select him for that, which is a very nice feather in his cap. And yeah, he did a good job from all I heard. I think he fit in really well with that crew.
And I know on numerous occasions you talked about George Blaha being as good as he is, but the problem with George is he's never had the opportunity to go on national broadcast. So unfortunately, a lot of people don't know about him. But yeah, that's a good one. I really, really like that one, George. I met Dan one or two times, but I don't know him that well. Then again, I don't live there and I don't cover the team on a regular basis, but I certainly enjoyed my time for that 3-game series. Okay, we'll turn it over to Mark. What's your parting shot?
My parting shot is I want to see the impact of Acuna being out for the rest of the year for the Braves. I think that's going to be a real interesting. It's going to probably take a couple of guys to replace what he had been doing thus far this year. He was having a really good year. He had a great year last year. He's reigning MVP, National League MVP. I don't know how you replace him, but it's going to be interesting to see how that plays out for them. Talking about Pittsburgh, they were in Pittsburgh this past weekend. Pittsburgh won 2-3 from them, and Acuna went down yesterday. So yeah, that's where I'm at. I want to know how that's all going to play out for them. It's just going to keep them at the top of the totem pole.
You know what, Candy? We're going to give you a parting shot. Go ahead, Candy.
I was hoping you would take that as a sign. So my parting shot has to be to Boston Red Sox reliever Chris Martin, who took offense yesterday when he was playing with the Milwaukee Brewers in the top of the 7th inning on Sunday's game. The Brewers bunted in consecutive at-bats against Martin in the 7th inning, leading to him having some words with Milwaukee first base coach Quentin Barry as the inning ended. The benches proceeded to clear, though no punches were thrown and no players or coaches were ejected. I'm sorry. Last I checked, bunting was part of the game. If it's a strategy you want to use, let him use it. Boston Red Sox reliever Chris Martin, keep your opinion to yourself because come on, they're just playing the game. You were just upset because you were losing at the time. It wasn't like someone intentionally threw a ball at somebody. It wasn't anything like that. They bunted the ball, which could be a hit. The Red Sox actually won that game. So really to take offense that they led off with 2 bunts back to back. Again, I'm sorry. You can throw whatever pitch you want. The batters can swing if they want to swing full swing or if they want to bunt. That's completely up to them, and you should not be taking offense to that. I'm sorry. That was poor, I think. Poor sportsmanship. It's a game.
Don't worry, Candy. I can take the hits from you. That's all I'll say. All right, we're going to send it over to Ashton. Go ahead, my friend.
My parting shot is going to be hopeful that the Texas Rangers and the Houston Astros get back on track and can really get this rivalry continued that we were hoping to see when they went 7 games in the ALCS last year. The Astros dealt with injuries early on. They're starting to come back. They're just a game back of the Rangers, who are struggling now with ungodly amount of injuries. They did win yesterday and break up their 6-game losing streak. Corey Seager with a couple of home runs, 6 home runs in his last 6 games. It looks like things might start to get back on track, and I'd love to see the AL West come down to the Rangers and Astros down the home stretch.
Well, at least you get to see him play an awful lot during the course of the year, so it's not the worst thing in the world either. It looks like the American League owns Texas, and the National League owns Pennsylvania. So what can I tell you? All right, my parting shot is this, okay? According to MLB, luisarraez has 8 more multi-hit games, 22, than strikeouts this season, 14. The Marlins are playing at San Diego for the next 3 games. Incidentally, in the bottom of the 8th, the Padres lead the Fish 2-1. And guess who has a hit? You named it, luisarraez. So I'm anxious to see how this trade plays out. I love watching luisarraez play. If you talk about, to me, a man that can win back-to-back batting titles in separate leagues, okay, to me, you can talk. I would, in fact, ironically, him playing in San Diego reminds us of Mr. Padre Tony Gwynn. So I hope and pray that luisarraez can find a home in San Diego. But luisarraez is not only missing South Florida, but he's probably the one player on the planet to me that I really, in recent years, when it comes to actual hitting, he gets it, and he's going to be a superstar for a long time to come. So, we'll see how the Marlins prospects play out over the next several years. They got a good prospect haul, but right now, I like what San Diego's done by adding Lewis. But no, that game is close. It'll be an interesting 3 days with the Padres and the Marlins, and for our Pittsburgh audience, they get the Pirates and the Detroit Tigers, and they both consider them rivals. So I'm glad we get to point out a couple of games. When we talk about the baseball show, not only do we talk about the top topics, but we also talk about what's ahead in the week until we bring this same show back to you next Monday night, same time, probably around 8:15 Eastern time will be your starting point. I didn't know, what everybody was doing on Memorial Day. That's why I moved it back by about 15 minutes, but we'll probably be on the air at 8:15 next week. That's what we're hoping to try to get done. So, meanwhile, great job on my crew. I enjoyed incorporating the segment where everybody gets their own parting shot, because after all, let's face the reality. You know what? I can't think of everything, but I got 4 or 5 people that are definitely capable of thinking of things I don't come up with. Any closing thoughts, Candy?
Nope, I'm good.
Okay, well, you know what? Your closing thought is one more station identification, and then we're going to go on the horn.
That's where you're going. Station identification. Okay. If you see the red subscribe button, that means you haven't subscribed to us. I don't understand why, but please do so. And then share us with all your friends and family, whoever would like to listen to on Monday nights baseball, Tuesday nights football, Wednesday nights all kinds of sports, Thursday nights to be determined yet. If you'd like to listen to the podcast, you can find us wherever you get your podcast. You can always go to our website, www.southfloridatribune.com. You can see writings of Scott, George, my pictures. We even put up all the broadcasts. We have transcripts from the Dolphins, the Jaguars, the Lions, and I know they're on off season, but they're still every once in a while sending us updates. You never know what they might be talking about. We cover the Marlins for the most part. And just so you know, Ashton, I think Texas is coming to Marlins Park. I think it's this next weekend. It's coming soon. We're hoping to get out there for that. But if you have show ideas, you can always email us, southfloridatribune@gmail.com, or be in a comment in the commentary here. Give us ideas, whatever you'd like, us to talk about. Let's see. If you want to advertise or sponsor a show, call Scott 954-304-4941. And his book is available Amazon, Kindle, Barnes & Noble, Apple, and Google. Lessons from the Microphone, Tuning into the Enduring Wisdom of Visionary Leaders. Anything else, Scott?
Yeah, as a matter of fact, George, you made an interesting reference about Dan Dickerson, but in my book, I talk about a lot of guys that went from sports to news. Dan Dickerson took the opposite way, going from news to sports. So I just want to get that out there. Okay, well, with that said, George, go ahead.
All right. I write for the South Florida Tribune, as Candy mentioned, under the Motor City Tribune. There's my book. There's a link to my book at the end of my columns. I just wrote a nice preview column. Thanks, guys, for publishing it on the Grand Prix. Big auto race coming to Detroit next weekend. And also, you can reach me at gicorn@yahoo.com, on LinkedIn. I'm also on there. I'm also on Twitter or X, whatever it is, at SandG Sports 99. And very happy to be part of Scott's and Candy's network here with 180 Stitches, the Sports Exchange, and other shows that they need me on. And I really appreciate the opportunity to talk to all of you tonight, too. Great show.
And
I
you
have
know
to
what?
go give a shout out to Dottie. Thank you. How
Yeah.
about them Brewers over Counsell's Cubs? Love it, Dottie.
Yeah, thanks for getting involved. Also, I do want other shout out to Ralph Williams and Rocket Scientists for taking a few minutes to come on tonight as well. Go ahead, Candy.
I have to give out a shout out to Dottie because Dottie was my pitcher when I played softball back in Wisconsin. So she is a great one to be talking about Brewers versus Cubs.
So she was what? You're saying what her position was?
She was a pitcher.
And you were the catcher,
a lot of
right?
times I would catch her, and sometimes then I would go in and relieve her too, because I was a jack of all trades. I could pitch, I could catch, I could play the field, but yeah, I caught for her many a times.
Very good. All right.
Great.
Learn some new things there. All right, Mark, go ahead.
Well, you can find me on the Original Sports Podcast or OSP with MM. We're on every social media platform. Our show streams live on Tuesday nights at 7:05, and you can find us on Roku on Tuesday nights from 9 to 10 on the ESEN, Elite Sports and Entertainment Network. Let me see. What else do you need to know about us? You can email us at originalsportspodcast@gmail.com if you have any questions, comments, or any kind of show you'd like to recommend for us. Feel free to reach out, and we'll get back to you.
And a late arrival, Josh Hader. What's going on? We got to put him. Welcome back, Ashton. There you go. Look at this, Ashton. Look at the people you're picking up.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Okay, well, hey, Josh Hader is good. Today was pretty low key with Memorial Day. I didn't get their normal FaceTime, but that's okay. I'm sure they'll go ahead. That's all right, Joshua. You can just go ahead and replay it again. All right, so who do we have left? We got the man himself, Ashton. Go ahead.
You can find me at Ashton_Nix on any social media platform. You can also follow us at Peak One Sports on all the platforms. We get you ready for your sports weekend on the leadoff Saturday mornings. We have the sports page on Wednesday nights. We do have our hockey show that's usually on Thursday nights. And I also write for the Burleson Buzz covering the minor league team, the Cleburne Railroaders of the American Association.
Well done.
Check all my stuff out.
Yeah, by all means. And again, Ashton's, as well as Mark and George, do a great job sharing our content on Twitter as well. And speaking of Twitter, I'm glad I remembered that. If you want to find us on Twitter, you can find us at Tribune South on Twitter as well. And don't forget the incredible job that Candy does on the website, www.southfloridatribune.com. She's a mastermind behind everything getting up there. And to me, she is just absolutely unbelievable. So Josh Hader wants to check out your hockey show. Boy, I'll tell you, get him out. You're going to have an interesting show. Go ahead.
Find us out at Peak One Sports, Facebook, whatever. You can have that. It's called Shut the Puck Up Hockey Show. So I got to make sure I always have to have that P hard in there.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, no, I don't blame you.
It's not my show. It's a couple other guys that do a great job. They're real huge hockey fans.
Yeah, Joshua Hader has a tendency to light things up whatever show he participates in, and that's putting it mildly.
Yeah.
I'm not going into any details with the intent to keep the show on a flow. But, I believe you can find Peak One Sports. They have a separate Facebook page. Is that correct? And all you have to do is like it. Is that correct? So there you go, Josh.
Yeah.
If you're on, and then you can even, when you go on Twitter, just go ahead and follow them there. But my recommendation for you, Josh, is like Peak One Sports on Facebook, and I'm sure you'll get the updates. And trust me, Ashton will welcome your comments. And tonight you were a little light because he came into the party late, but I have a feeling that show is definitely up Joshua's entertainment alley for sure. So on that note, great job by my crew tonight. I want to thank George. I want to thank Mark. I want to thank Candy and Ashton, of course, our newest addition, and without question, one of our best additions of the year so far. And we appreciate the time that Ashton comes on because he's a straight shooter and simply knows his stuff. Glad to have you.
Appreciate it.
So on behalf of them, I want to once again thank everybody for joining us. Happy Memorial Day. And once again, our deepest appreciation for all the veterans that have served our country. Good night, everybody. We'll see you next Monday night. We should be going live at around 8:15 p.m. Eastern time. So take care and hope you can join us. Good night, everybody.
Good night.